This Week in Economics on 30th of May 2015. On some outlets, this will be on the 31st of May, depending on your outlet. But on the iHeart franchise, Speaker franchise, it'll be on the 30th of May. Nonetheless, this is the latest information that we have. We'll start off with a little bit of introducing the Greek equation into the EU from the Reuters agency, and then we'll move completely around and go to the US and be consistent here, but nonetheless all these things do fit in the puzzle. This is from a Reuters dispatch on the out of Athens today. The Greek government is confident of reaching a deal with its creditors this week and is open to pushing back parts of the anti-austerity program to make that happen. That's from the Interior Minister of Greece. Greece and its EU IMF creditors have been locked in talks for a month over a cash for reforms deal, and pressures growing for a deal since Athens risk default without aid from a bailout program that expires on the 30th of June. So we have some time here. We believe we can and must have a solution, a deal within weeks. That's from the Interior Minister there, Nikos Vadis, who is not involved in the talks with the leaders, told Skydia TV. Some parts of our program could be pushed back by 6 months or maybe by a year, so that there is a balance. But this in itself is very, very skeptical. He did not elaborate on parts of the ruling Syriza party's anti-austerity program that could be pushed back, but the comments suggest a greater willingness to compromise on pre-election pledges. The Prime Minister, Alexis Trimpatis, stormed to power in January on a promise to cancel austerity, including restoring the minimum wage and collective bargaining rights. Now, these are some things that would not be palatable in Greece. With a bit of caution, various statements by various people. You have to wait until there is an agreement and the agreement is worked out. Now, there are some things here that Greece, that Votis said in Athens and his partners agree on some issues, such as achieving low primary budget surplus in the first 2 years, but it still disagrees on a sales tax, with Greece pushing so any VAT hikes would not burden low-income people. VAT, you will get that in Europe and, of course, also in Canada, not in the U.S. That's a value-added tax on everything, a national sales tax. But like all sales taxes, hurt low-income people or the poor. Same thing with sales tax. And this is where the debt standoff there from this article, and the European Union partners overshadowed a meeting of policymakers, a group of 7 richest nations in Dresden, Germany on Friday. The U.S. warned of a possible accident. And this is one of the things that's scaring parts of the financial community. Accident for the world economy of Greece, and its creditors miss the deadline. Now, with an interview with Real News newspaper published, the economics minister, that's George Stakakis, said in Greece had no immediate plan. The plan B doesn't exist. Our country needs to stay in the Eurozone, but on a better organized aid program. Stavrakis was confident a deal will be reached Otherwise, mainly Greece, but the European Union as well, will step into uncharted waters. Well, it will be uncharted waters, but the problem is, and that's a phrase, the problem that they're in uncharted waters, and they have been in uncharted waters for a while. Let's move to the U.S. We try to move from the outer edge of this economic puzzle, we'll call it, back to the U.S., and this is from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. National income and product accounts. This is gross domestic product. Otherwise, GDP first quarter Q1 2015. This is a second estimate. Corporate profits Q1 preliminary estimate. And we'll just read from it. Real gross domestic product, the value of products, of goods and services in the U.S., adjusted for price change, decreased at an annual rate of 0.7% in Q1 of 2015, according to the second estimate released by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. In the fourth quarter, real GNP increased to 2.2%. The GNP estimate released today is based upon more complete source data than were available for the advanced estimate issued last month. In advanced estimate, real GNP was 0.2%, but with the second estimate for Q1, imports increased more and private investment inventory increased less than previously estimated. The decrease in real GNP in Q1 primarily reflects negative contributions from exports, non-residential fixed investment, and state local government spending that were partly offset by positive contributions from personal consumption expenditure, private investment inventories, and residential fixed investment imports, which are a subtraction in the calculation of GNP, increased. Upcoming annual revision of national income and product accounts. The annual revision of the national income and product accounts will be released along with advanced estimates of GNP for Q2, that's the second quarter of 2015, on July the 30th. In addition, the regular revision of the estimate for most recent 3 years and for the first quarter of 2015. So we'll get that at the end of July. Real GNP decreased by 0.7% in Q1 2015, in contrast to an increase of 2.2% in Q4 of 2014. The downturn in previous change in real GNP primarily reflected a deceleration in PCE and a downturn in exports, in non-residential fixed investment in state and local government spending that were partially offset by deceleration in imports and upturn in federal government spending and in private inventory investment. The fixed price index for gross domestic product purchases, which measures prices paid by U.S. residents, decreased 1.6% in Q1, a downward revision of 0.1% from the advanced estimate. This index decreased 0.1% in Q4 for a quarter, excluding food and energy prices. The price index for gross domestic purchases increased 0.2% compared with an increase of 0.7%. That would be in Q4 of 14. Real income consumption expenditure increased 1.8% in Q1 compared with an increase of 4.4% in Q4. Durable goods increased 1.1% compared with an increase of 6.2% in Q4. Non-durable goods increased 1/10% compared with an increase of 4.1%. Services increased 2.5% compared with 2.3% in Q4. Both a non-residential fixed investment decreased 2.8% in Q1 in contrast to an increase of 4.7% in Q4. Investment in non-residential structures decreased 20.8% in contrast to an increase of 5.4%. Investment in equipment increased 2.7% compared with an increase of 0.6% in Q4. Investment in intellectual property products increased 3.6% compared with an increase of 10.3% in Q4. Residential fixed investment increased 5% compared with an increase of 3.8%. So it is mixed. Real export of goods and services decreased 7.6% in Q1 in contrast to a 4.5% in Q4 increase. Real imports of goods and services increased 5.6% compared with an increase of 10.4% in Q4. Real federal government consumption expenditures and gross investment increased 1/10% in Q1 in contrast to a decrease of 7.3% in Q4. National defense decreased 1% compared with a decrease of 12.2% that was in Q4 of 2014. So some improvement there. Non-defense increased 2% compared with an increase of 1.5%. Real state and local government consumption expenditures and gross investment decreased 1.8% in contrast to an increase of 1.6%. So a little 2/10 there. Change in real private investment added 0.33% in Q1. GMP after subtracting 0.10% from the fourth quarter change. Private business increased inventories of $95 billion in Q1 following an increase of $80 billion in Q4 and $82.2 billion in Q3, that's of 2014. Real final sales of domestic product less change in private inventory decreased 1.1% in Q1 in contrast to an increase of 2.3% in Q4. Gross domestic purchases by U.S. residents of goods and services wherever purchased increased 1.1% in Q1 compared with an increase of 3.2% in Q4. Gross national product decreased 1.4% in Q1 in contrast to an increase of 1.4% in Q4. GMP includes and GDP excludes net receipts of income from the rest of the world, which decreased 24.9 billion in Q1 compared with a decrease of 30.7 billion, so a little improvement there. In Q4, in the first quarter, receipts decreased $22.4 billion and payments increased 2.5 billion. Current dollar GDP, the market value of production of goods and services in the U.S. decreased 0.9% or 38.7 billion in Q1 to a level of 17.65 trillion there. And in the fourth quarter, current dollar GMP increased 2.4% or 108.9 billion. That's current dollars there. Gross domestic income, which means the value of production of goods and services in the U.S. as the costs incurred and the income earned in production, increased 1.4% in Q1 compared with 3.7%